Welcome to our continuing series of virtual voices, focusing on the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We are very honored today to have Her Excellency Ambassador Isabelle Picco of Monaco. She chaired the United Nations Legal Committee of the General Assembly in 2010 and chaired the 22nd meeting of the states parties to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea in 2012. She was elected twice as the Vice President of the General Assembly. She also co-chaired the Informal Consultative Process on Oceans and the Law of the Sea from 2019 to 2022. In 2022, she served on the boards of the United Nations Women and UNICEF. Her Serene Highness Prince Albert II awarded her with the insignia of the Knight of the Order of St. Charles, and in 2020 promoted her to officer. Her Excellency Isabelle Picco holds master's degrees in international and environmental law from the University of Paris Patheon-Sorbonne. She speaks French, English, Italian, and Spanish. Over to you, Your Excellency.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Durbach. I'm delighted to be able to be with you today and to be listened to by so many great people and friends of my dear friend, Mariam Azam. So when Mariam asked me if I would be willing to talk to you today, I was thinking of what was the best way to try to share an insider experience, because so many people don't know how delegations and diplomats work at the United Nations. And as you mentioned, presenting my bio, you know, sports and oceans are two of the main subjects that Monaco is involved in the United Nations. So I chose sports because oceans are a little more legally complicated. But you know, we hope that by the end of the week we will have a new treaty on the high seas, and this is taking most of our time those days. So I chose sport because Monaco, as you know, is very involved in sport. It did start under Prince Albert I last century. And now we have probably the only head of state and the princess. We were both Olympians. So, and the prince is also a member of the IOC. He has been for a long time. So sport is very dear to Monaco, where we also host a major sports event, and we have teams and a lot of success. So I also chose sport because when Monaco became a member in 1993, the resolution on sport that was adopted at that session, at the 48th session, is really what put sport on the agenda of the General Assembly. And it was presented at the time by Egypt on behalf of the Group of 77, or the African group at least. And it was the first draft resolution that Monaco co-sponsored. And it was entitled Building a Peaceful and Better World Through Sport and the Olympic Ideal. So when I was a student in law school, one of the professors wanted to give a lecture throughout the year on many subjects of international law, international public law, and he had chosen the principle of proportionality. So thinking about that, I thought that sport would be a good mean for me to promote and to explain some of the sustainable development goals that we have adopted back in 2015, together with the program 2030 on sustainable development. So I will give you a very quick background of how the subject of sport has evolved inside the UN. So we had that first resolution in 1993 that was followed immediately after in 1994 by an international year on sport and the Olympic ideal. So after that, in 2001, an office on sports, Secretary General at that time was Kofi Annan, decided to appoint a special advisor. He was funded by a voluntary contribution, mainly based in Geneva. He was a former president of the Swiss Confederation. His name was Adolphe Augy. And so this office really helped to make a link between what the UN was doing and also the many sport entities based in Geneva, but also NGOs around the world. They developed some concepts. And then in 2005, Tunisia presented the International Year of Sport and Physical Education. So here we were more of how can I say sport for health, physical activity, not about competition or professional sport. So this was extremely important. And I made a mistake, excuse me, I need to correct myself. It was only in 2008 that 2001, Kofi Annan appointed President Augy. And 2005, we have the International Year of Physical Education. And after that, the Group of Friends was created. So the Group of Friends, it was a reunion between the special advisor and that initiative from Switzerland that had suggested to Kofi Annan, plus the work of Tunisia. So they became the first co-chairs of the Group of Friends for sport and development at the UN. So then in 2009, another milestone was accomplished because the International Olympic Committee became an observer in the General Assembly. And as you know, observers are normally international organizations, and the IOC doesn't qualify. It is not an international organization per se because it's not made of government. But nevertheless, considering the scope of the Olympic family and what they could contribute to the UN General Assembly, they were granted that observer status. So then in 2013, by that time in 2010, I had become the co-chair because Peter Maurer, who was the Swiss ambassador at the time, became the chair, the president of the ICRC. So he went back to Switzerland, and Monaco joined Tunisia into being the other co-chair. So as a co-chair, I was asked by the president of the General Assembly at that time, who happened to be also the president of the Serb Tennis Federation, to negotiate a resolution that eventually in the summer of 2013 proclaimed the 6th of April each year, the International Day of Sport for Development and Peace. So with all that, when we negotiated the program 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, we decided that it was time to try to push sport inside the policy and the political declaration. So it was not easy at the time because it was already a long document, like member state can develop, but and the co-facilitators first told me, it's going to be difficult to have a single paragraph on sport, and it was put together with culture, sport, the arts, and finally, because the other delegation that was pushing for culture didn't want to have sport and culture together, so each of us got a paragraph in that very important political declaration. So this was extremely useful because it gave us a tool after that to really push through that for the SDGs and trying to make a link to each of the 17 SDGs with sport. And by 2008, President Ogi relinquished his post as a special advisor, and Wilfried Lemke from Germany was chosen by Ban Ki-moon, and he was reappointed until the office stopped altogether in 2017. So after 2 years after the adoption of Program 2030 and the SDGs, Antonio Guterres was elected as a new Secretary General, and he decided that it was not necessary to have an office in Geneva dedicated to sport, that there was enough entities dealing with that. And so at first, it left us a little bit worried. But then suddenly we realized that for us as a co-chair, as a permanent representative, we could actually lead the way and really rely on that political declarations that had been adopted by our heads of state and government, and start to asking the UN system in its entirety to say, listen, in 2015, this was adopted. What has your organization been doing to implement that? And through that, the different SDGs that you. Can you still hear me?
I didn't hear you for a couple of seconds. Something interrupted.
Somebody muted me. So okay, but I'm back on, right? Yes.
Yes, so, I don't know who in the world could have muted you.
It's okay. I wasn't sure, but I pushed unmute. So 2017 is a turning point. From there, yes. First with my colleague from Tunisia, and then with my colleague from Qatar, we really organize regular meetings, bringing UNICEF, UN Women, UNDP, UNEP, each institution within the UN, to ask about what is your organization doing for sport. We open also the group to many NGOs to learn about what they were doing for bringing the SDGs into the mainstream and into real life. So people understand that through the SDGs, it's really an agenda that is far-reaching for individual, and that is not known enough. So many times I go to Paris, I go to Monaco, I talk about the SDGs, and people look at me and say, what are you talking about? What are those? So here I come. There are 17 SDGs. I don't know. I know that a few friends that are listening to me know what we are talking about. But I'm going to go by the orders of the SDGs and try to make a connection with sport. So, I do believe that if we had used so much financial means that have been devoted to other issues, we would have won the fight to eliminate poverty around the world. But unfortunately, this is not the case. So the first goal is to eliminate potentially poverty, but we all know that especially after the COVID pandemic, the financing of the Sustainable Development Goals really took a toll. So poverty is for me linked to education, lack of access to fresh water, so many things where people stay isolated in the margin of society. So sport, and through the Global Refuge Foundation, for example, of the IOC, is really trying to alleviate that aspect of our world. And in the refugee camps, the UNHCR set up sport facilities, so people can be fed, but also have some kind of physical activity. So one of the most obvious link between sport or physical activity and the SDGs is probably the one on good health. So because we all know the UN has all the conferences on the subject, that the lack of physical activity is directly linked to bad health. This is obvious for so many people, but unfortunately, it's not enough regulated, and it's linked directly with quality education, because most of the time, developing countries think that it's a privilege to put sport into the curriculum. Or we have seen that also with the huge problem of drowning. That they think that teaching children to swim is a luxury, but it's not. It's a life-saving activity. So this good health, of course. You think about moving, and we learned it during COVID. We even with my colleague from Qatar, we contributed a tribune in the UN Chronicle. To tell people to move, not to stay put, not to stay in front of your screen. We spend hours in meeting, so this is really obvious. What is less obvious is when very well-renowned athletes, and I would like to mention two of them, and they are American, and they are alpine skiers. Are bringing some subjects that are directly relating to health and to female health. They are taking the stand, and they help developing conversation on subjects that can be sensitive or people don't want to address. So recently I saw some videos and some posts of Michaela Schifrin, who she's one of the most decorated athletes with 84, I think, wins in her still ongoing career. And she started to talk about that period of the months where she was not feeling at her best. And I think that this is very important, because it brings a subject of things that we don't want to talk about. And this is, menstruation for women, and how athletes can, by the stance they take, saying, listen, it's right, I'm not feeling good, I'm not at my best, it hurts, I feel poorly, I don't even want to go out, and now I need to go out and compete. So what is the message that those highly recognized athletes send? They send to the little girl that is feeling so bad that she doesn't want to go to school, that it's normal to feel that way, that there is no shame of feeling that way. It also sends a message about people, female, who don't have access to what we take for granted. We go to the pharmacy, we buy pads, it's normal, but some people don't have that, so they cannot go out of the house, because they don't have that kind of access for their health. So then, you have somebody like Lindsey Vonn, who has done so much in the US, and she keeps doing it for education, everything. And she showed by going down that slope that is only a downhill skiing for male normally in Austria, that a woman can also do it. So for me, when you relate for good health, is not only on that, but also through athletes and their involvement, about talking about subjects that we don't want to address, because most people think that maybe they feel some shame, or they don't like to, because it's very private to touch those subjects. But I think it's very important for the well-being of young girl and women. Then quality of education. So I already said that unfortunately, too many countries don't have the luxury of having a strong physical education program in their curriculum. But this is also what we have been promoting with UNESCO. It's a Kazan plan of action that was adopted in 2017. And really, if you Google that action plan that was adopted in Kazan in Russia in 2017 by the ministers of sport, you realize that you have a blueprint for the countries that don't have a Ministry of Sport. But with that document, you can basically build a curricula for any school to have a school integrated into education. And we know by the data that have been collected by UNICEF how much early education is important for the development of the brain of children. And we know also how much play is important. And everybody knows that a young child cannot stay put for more than 30 minutes, or that the scope of attention is very limited. So to learn through play and through physical activities is actually an asset for later in life for education. Then another, and this is goal number 5 in the SDGs, this is gender equality. So gender equality and sport, obviously, if you're in America and you know how the very successful female soccer team could finally get their way and be respected and be paid as their male counterparts. Gender inequality has been rampant in sport, like in every aspect of our lives. Again, UN Women has started a program that is called Sport for Generation Equality, and they partner with the IOC on that. So through that program, the goal is to bring more people to realize that you cannot live apart half of human society. So I could also see it when we received for a side event a few years ago a very successful female soccer team in France. And contrary to their male counterparts, they had to work on the side and they would play soccer just for the love of the sport. And they were not helped. They had to work side jobs. They were not, even when they were winning, they would not receive the same recognition as the male. So there is a long way to go. And there is also a long way to go in terms of protection of female athletes through harassment, through online harassment, through shaming, all those aspects. So I think that sport is another way of showing that we have to work hard to attain that gender equality, and sport as any aspect of work or studies is still very imperfect as in terms of gender equality. So we have been trying, to really push more, and UN Women Strategic Plan 2019-2023 recognize the role of sport and the sports sector, because the sports sector is it's every kind of businesses that deals with sport. It can be it's not limited to television, but it's brands. It's very different aspects of our everyday life that we need to insert positive social norms, be it when you have a female on the field commentating on a soccer game, when you have a partnership, and this is what we are trying to work out with UN Women and Generation Equality, how we can bring those two words, generation equality, into the mainstream, and maybe have it on the jersey of a very famous team, whatever sport. So people would start to ask, what is it? What are they doing? Because we need to break not only social norms, but racial norms and all the barriers that we find in real life. We're trying to do it through sport. So then goal number 6 is clean water and sanitation. So, we're going to have the next conference on water later in March, and access to water and the lack of it, the quality of it is really something that is going to be hunting us, like climate change is really starting to haunt us nowadays, because in the next 2 decades, very big cities that I don't even want to name could run out of enough water because they are growing too fast. And clean water has been extremely, and the access to water has been extremely hard on women and young women, because normally those are the chores of female to go and look for water at a well when you are in a developing country, and that you have to work miles to do that. The very famous runner from Kenya, now I forgot her name. She started an NGOs in Kenya educating girls, and Lorupe, and she was running all the time, and she would run to get to the well and to bring back water to her family. So again, you can walk, you can run. It's a physical activity, and through what has become, because you became suddenly a champion, and this was a way for you to have a clean water for your family. Suddenly you're teaching something more. Then affordable and clean energy, and it's related also to water and sport, and the IOC has made a point in becoming carbon neutral itself. But more and more, because of the lack of snow, we see places where winter games are hosted, not having enough snow, being obliged to harvest snow. So this is something, there is a big responsibility on the sports sector to really take this into account. And last year, sport and climate change was the theme of the 6th of April. We have been working closely for the last few years with the Department of Global Communication at the UN to focus every year on the 6th of April on a specific subject. So last year it was climate change. It was also important because so much has been said about the Soccer World Cup in Qatar. So of course they were using water that was stored away from the stadium, but it was not the air conditioning that we know and that we use in our house, that use gases, etc. So more and more the infrastructures, the architects need to innovate to take into account those aspects for sport venues. How can you be more sustainable? What are the materials that you're going to use? How to position openings so fresh air can circulate? And for the winter resort hosting the games, the Olympic Committee has decided that they will wait places where they would ensure enough snowfall, not to be obliged to use so much water to make snow. So the goal number 8 is on decent work and economic growth. And I'm not an economist, but just as a consumer, I realize how much the sport industry, how much money they are making. It's not only through, even gaming now. I don't know if we can consider that a sport, but there is so much money being made by the world of sport that I do believe that it has to be paired with decent work. It's a very harsh reality. It's relating also to everybody working for the sport industry, and that's why we had promoted a paragraph in the Commission on Social Development on the decent work, and that recognize the power of sport, and a good education as gives you more opportunity to be able to have a decent job, and it's also not to be excluded from society. And it helps to eliminate or at least reduce stereotypes, and it creates opportunities. And for the last few years, I've worked with so many athletes, male and female, that got an education, a higher education, and sometimes they were the first in their family, thanks to scholarships that they had obtained through sport. So there are people working at the UN that have joined the International Civil Service thanks to that. So it's something that it's very, very concrete, and it's very it's something good, at least. So again, I go back to the industry, the necessity to adapt to climate change, and goal number 9 is on industry innovation and infrastructure. So this relates to exactly what I said before. So I don't think that I need to go back to that. So goal number 10 is to reduce inequalities. So I already mentioned some of the aspects of the social development. And I also want to praise the division of inclusive social development at the United Nations, which is part of the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, because after Secretary General Guterres didn't renew the mandate of the special advisor, they were tasked by following that agenda, and to preparing the biannual report of the Secretary General on sport. And they have done an incredible job to really try to push every 2 years when we adopt a resolution. They try to bring concrete proposal to push member states to do more on the subject. So it's also a way to bring into the mainstream of our conversation people with disabilities. Again, I have met a young skier that hurt himself so badly that he became paralyzed, and then he became a competitor in racing. And through racing, he need to have of course, because he couldn't have the mobility of the other competitors. So, the industry helped adapt his track because he was running a Paris-Dakar in a track. So this is also something that, through sport, through advocacy, through reinventing yourself after a sporting incident that left you paralyzed, and also show people that maybe were born with disabilities or have been suffering from disabilities later in their life, how they shouldn't be excluded from sport, and through sport being more integrated into the society. So for goal number 11 is sustainable cities and communities. Again, I think it's a responsibility of officials, of cities, communities, states, at every level, you know, you don't need expensive infrastructure. You need a safe place to practice physical activity. And in New York, we brought him to the UN. There is at the Hospital of Special Surgery, Dr. Metzel conducts iron strength. He does it on Central Park. He does it on the Intrepid. We did it at the UN. It's about the medicine of moving. And for that, you know, cities need to have a space. But if they don't have the space, and we met runners from Ireland that have been using running as a way to integrate immigrants in their communities. And you run, you talk, you say, where are you coming from? What are you doing? Those people were, because they were displaced and they couldn't find their place in a new community. And through sport, through running, you know, they found affordable housing, they found maybe a job. So this is really something that, again, where sport can bring a community together. So responsible consumption and production, and this is goal number 12. We have seen the major brands around the world trying to reuse and recycle, and this is very important. You know, I think this is the realization that you cannot dump tons of sporting material, jerseys, shoes, whatever, and that you need, like the bottles that we use to recycle those products. So from the sportswear to infrastructure, again, you know, it's about doing the most out of what nature has given us. And this is directly related with climate action. And for climate action, I told you that it was a theme of last year. There is a YouTube video that those interested can look at on the internet. I want to mention, because I told you that Monaco and sport it's a special bond, and with ocean also. And at the moment, there is that ocean race going around. They started the leg 3. They left from Cape Town last weekend. And all the race boats that are involved in that race around the world, the sailing race around the world, there is not a single boat that is not equipped with some kind of technology to study be it you know, pH of the ocean, different things. So again, it's a contribution of the sport, and in that case, sailing, to have data about fighting climate action. And this is also related to goal number 14, that we had to fight very hard. Prince Albert II was one of the few, I believe it was 5 head of state and government that dared to ask for a separate goals on ocean, and it's called Life Underwater. But we call it SDG 14. We're gonna have the third conference in 2025, in 2027, excuse me, in Nice, France. And of course, you know, oceans are so huge that we have to take every opportunity of people being on them to study them. So the sailing community is very, very much involved, and the competitor from Monaco, Malizia, it has a big sale that says that it's a race that we must win. So this is very, very important. Goal 15 is life on land. So I mentioned sport infrastructures that need to be respectful of the environment, but also when you build them of treating people decently. And then that brings me to a goal that is very dear to my heart, because it covers very unacceptable behaviors toward children. And this goal number 16, it's a peace, justice, strong institutions. So, you know, I participated on a side event that was initiated by my colleague from Gabon. And there is so much exploitation of children through sport. You know, parents are led to pay those traffickers, and sometimes they indebt themselves with the idea that their children is going to be a soccer star in Europe. And in reality, in the best case scenario, those children arrive in Europe and are left alone if they are not put into more criminal organization where they can be for labor or sexual exploitation. So this is something where I really believe that the world of sport and the medias and the big brands have a responsibility to help government stop that kind of trafficking. There was one of the panelists was a film maker from South Africa, and he was explaining how many years it took him and his family to have his sister that was being exploited realize that she was a victim, you know. But so many children are taken away from their family, find themselves totally abandoned on the other side of the world. I think it's something that obviously it's not only in the world of sport, but sport has a special responsibility because there is so many knowledge and nobody is saying anything. So this is really horrible, and we need to really shame and blame this. You know, in Monaco we have a very good program, but the youth, they are obliged to go to school. So many corporations have programs in around their headquarters where they help children not to be in the street after school, but to be involved in a sport training, with the condition that they do go to school and they do deliver in school. So you can really change communities, but you also need to put out and really speak out about the trafficking going. It's not only about the corruption of some big organization. Of course, this needs to be challenged and corrected. But I think that the abuse of young athletes, the way it has happened even in a country like the US with gymnastics, we cannot stop. We have to stop thinking that it doesn't happen to us or it doesn't happen there or there. This really needs more attention, and we are working with the UN Office on Drug and Crime to try to be more involved and to bring the big federations and organizations in sport to address that issue. And this brings me to the last SDG, which is SDG number 17 on partnerships. So, you know, at the UN we develop policies, but nothing happens if it's not linked to activities in the real life. That's why, you know, through the Department of Global Communication, we use that to promote the sport through the different UN entities. We try to use that angle because so many people watch sport on TV. So it's really about, and also there is a lot of financing available. And we have an organization in Monaco which is named Peace and Sport. And it was created by a former Olympic gold medalist, Joël Bouzou, in a modern pentathlon. And Peace and Sport is collaborating with the Council of Europe, with the UNHCR, with UNESCO, They work with more than 50 international sporting bodies, and but also with big entities like the IOC or the Commonwealth. Commonwealth is helping us to collect data because, you know, nowadays, to be more analytic, you cannot do anything if you don't have access to data, because this is to pinpoint where progress should be made in a more accurate manner. So, you know, I must say that I had the privilege to be the co-chair of the group of friends since 2010. And I've really seen so many heartwarming stories. There are also very difficult subjects that we need to address, but this is something that is less, and at least should not be controversial. So the 93 member states can come together and try to promote the Sustainable Development Goals, and also good relations between our government and people. So I will stop there, because I think that oh my God, I spoke too much. I would be glad to answer any questions that would be put forward by people who are following us. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Björk.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for an excellent presentation. Not only your perspectives on the development goals, but also on bringing up the topic of the menstruation problem with women. And basically, when I spoke to the General Assembly in 1994 at Istanbul, I mentioned it's very, very important that every child has an opportunity to be fed, clothed, and educated. And otherwise, as you know, the overpopulation of the world is one of our biggest problems, and it focuses on pretty much all of the issues that you mentioned. But you certainly picked on the most important aspect in each of the Sustainable Development Goals, and we are very grateful. And now I'm going to turn over to Susie Halak, who is our moderator for the questions. Susie, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Durbach, and thank you so much, Your Excellency, for the inspiring presentation. We have lots of questions from the audience. So the first one is, you spoke about gender equality and sports. Are women who play sports growing up more likely to be leaders in society and the workplace?
Absolutely, absolutely, and there are so many examples of that. One of I met amazing people and female. One of them just stepped down from being on the association of squash. And you know, squash is one of the few sports that first gave equal pay to male and female athletes. And you know, Maria Turpakai, you know, for people who wouldn't know her, she was playing squash, and she was born and raised in Pakistan, and she had to dress as a boy to be able to be outside and play with her brother. And then the first tournament that she played, she had to dress as a boy, until eventually, because she was becoming successful, she had to speak out who she really was. So, you know, so many people. There is a colleague in the department that I mentioned before, with whom we work. She was the first educated person in her family, and she's coming from the CARICOM. So I think that because sport teaches you, you know, the rules apply the same for everybody. That's why I think it's very important, and to also have a co-ed up to a certain point, because obviously the female body and the male body have not the same strength. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be trained and given access to this. So I'm sure, because when you have to follow rules even when you are at school, and because you're playing team sport, this teaches you that you have to respect rule. It teaches you humility if you want to become a better at the sport that you have chosen. And then because it gives you some resilience, it teaches you that you're not obliged to take no for an answer. You can go back to the drawing board and say, look, what did I do wrong? And if you have been pushing yourself through some kind of sport, or even when you run, so many people run and clears their mind. When I walk to work, I think about subject and suddenly things appear clearly. I think it definitely prepares you, and the IOC, and I've seen it because I went a few years ago to the Youth Olympic Games in Buenos Aires, and the IOC really helps athletes, Olympians, to convert and to have access to a decent job after their career has ended. So definitely, it's I think that the data on that would be overwhelmingly positive.
Thank you. And one audience member raised the issue that sexism continues to be a problem in our society, although we've come very far. What sexist beliefs stifle opportunities for women who want to pursue a career in global sports?
Well, when Nike designed a hijab for that track and field athlete, these are the few things. Then you in different countries there are different rules, but it really says, oh, at the end, what's the difference? So I think that by opening, it's an eye opener. I don't believe in shocking people to promote something, but sometimes we need to be waken up. So I think to shaming a female body because she needs strength in her thighs to go downhill, or because she throws a disc, so she needs to develop muscles in her upper body. I think this has no place in our society. But again, because we live in a world of everything is so consumed so fast, and through all those social medias, I think that this is the duty of athletes. Serena Williams, she's an amazing athlete. She doesn't have the body of Caroline Wozniacki, and they are best friends. So who cares, But it takes those kind of personalities to show that it is okay to be different, and that they are proud of their body. And if you don't like it, look somewhere else. And this, I think, we don't need to shock. Or I'm not somebody who likes to be in the face of people, but I think the time has come to really say, look, this is what it is, and if you're not happy, pass your way. Yeah, and those women that are faces that are recognized, I think they have that duty, and they do assume that duty.
What is your favorite part of your work, and which projects have been most impactful for you throughout your career?
Well, I'm very grateful that I got an education, that I grew up in a country where sport is something that you do after school, that if you want to dedicate yourself to something, you're going to have a federation that support you. You can go to game. We have a special Olympic teams where those children with some disabilities compete. We always have athletes. So I think this is at the UN, and this is why I chose that subject, because when you represent a small developed country, and we are very humble. Prince Rainier III and Prince Albert II, who succeeded him, always thought that we don't need to be big and powerful to promote good deeds. So certainly the fact that that resolution on sport was the first one that Monaco co-sponsored, and then being given that opportunity back in 2010, it has been extremely, I can even say pleasant, sometimes disturbing when you learn things, but also it gives you a responsibility to speak out. And between colleagues and people in the secretariat, it has been an amazing journey. But this is thanks to the education, and education starts in the family. My sister and I were always taught by our parents that we are privileged, but that also brings responsibilities. And, it's not because you can have everything at your disposal that you should just have some disdain. I think that on the contrary, you have an even bigger responsibility to work hard. And when you work hard, your peers respect you. And when you stay true to yourself, people cannot really attack you because they have no grip. So for me, I do believe in the UN. Of course, the situation, there are wars around the world, and not only in my part of the world, and there is suffering. So at least I try to always put myself in the shoes of a colleague that is less maybe lucky, because his government, his country is facing different kind of struggles. And I think we need to stay open and be firm on principle, but always very respectful to others, how we can deliver. But without the UN, I think the situation would be even worse. So that's why I want to promote they are here, the Sustainable Development Goals, and try to keep doing it.
Thank you. We're aware that you know many languages. Why do you think it's important for, especially there's many students joining today, why is it important for them to learn different languages? In Monaco, you grew up very close to Italy. So for me, Italian was probably the first foreign language, even if my parents insisted that I have English as a first foreign language when it came to high school. And then I learned Spanish at the United Nations. So obviously, French, Italian, Spanish are very close. And I also started learning Russian. And I think it gives you develop some part of your brains, and somehow I remember I could, unfortunately, at a certain point I didn't have enough time to dedicate myself to that, and I could never combine all the declensions. But somehow, I do remember vividly that I was saying, wow, there is a connection between that word and that word in another language. And also, there is nothing more satisfactory that when you don't have to turn the language button, that you can listen to a delegation speaking in their own words. So I wish that I would speak as many foreign languages as the UN. And my next aim is to learn Portuguese, because I can read it, but I cannot speak it. I think it's really, nowadays we all speak, I'm sorry for my French accent, or we all speak English, but when we need to negotiate, we always go back to the to the UK delegation to make sure that it's the correct form of English, because otherwise it has become a UN terminology, and which is almost a separate language with all the acronyms that we use and everything. But it's fantastic, because the more you travel, the more you meet people, and to be able to communicate. This is a gift, because I always say
that my greatest gift is my colleagues, because we are all bringing something different, and we feed into the UN. And I think those differences are riches instead of differences. It's what at the end we are common humanity. We breathe the same air, and but we don't have the same quality of air. So we have to realize that we are all equal, but some are more privileged. So we have to give back. And the UN is a way to have government take responsibility to eradicate poverty and to give access to education, clean water, clean environment, and use our natural resources in a sustainable way. So we're leaving the next generation a very unbalanced world. I do believe that more women in a leadership position, the less conflicts there will be. I also do believe that with artificial intelligence, we can teach peace, culture of peace to children. So hopefully those new technology will be put to good use for the best common future that we can only work hard for the succeeding generations.
Is encouraging individual exercise, like going to the gym, jogging, just as impactful across the population as team sports, or is the team aspect a lot more impactful?
I know. I think it's both. When I was in school, I remember I didn't like so much contact sport. You play handball, of course, you're going to be pushed, or basketball, or so. It really comes to anybody's choice. But as I said, you don't even need to go outside. You lay down on the floor. Now you go on the internet. There are so many exercises to take care of your back. And believe me, for the hours I stay seated, I need to go down on the floor and do some exercise, or I'm gonna be so stiff that I cannot even walk to work. So for me, I am lucky enough that I can play tennis, which is really taking my mind away. But I don't believe that, and this is also what Peace and Sport had done in Africa. They had created a manual to show that you don't need expensive infrastructure or tools to practice some kind of physical activity. So I think it's up to any individual, not to stay put on the couch, and you can get up and dance, put music and dance in your living room. This is physical activity, and you can go out and run, or just walk, or whatever is available to you, and also depending on what you prefer, to be with others, or to be alone, or to be separated by a net, if you're really going into a more regulated sport. But physical activities, when you start, is just moving. That's it.
Do you know what the most sustainable and or popular sport is, or are there many?
The most what do you say, sustainable sport? Well, I don't know, because obviously you would think that being outside and running is sustainable, but then you say, okay, what am I wearing? What is the quality of the air I'm breathing while I'm running? So I don't think that there is really. I think what is important is that following the lead of the IOC, because the IOC has an impact on what federation in different sports are doing around the world, that people realize that they need to be more careful of the way the world of sport is behaving globally. In fabricating, in producing the outfits and the shoes we wear, but so many kids play barefoot, or even you don't need a soccer ball. You can make a ball out of plastic that you will find outside in the street. So I think that I think that each sport has a specific responsibility, and the more worldwide recognized sport, the bigger the responsibility. I think that's why soccer or even Formula One, it may look crazy that in the time of energy scarcity, we still have those races, but those races have created so much knowledge about better using engines, fuels, or even for the common car to bring safety. So it's never an easy answer, but always to have in mind all those aspects of the goals. I think it's you need constantly to ask yourself, what could I do better and why it has an impact.
Thank you. What do you think needs to be done so that at least 90% of the population of the world does sports, and how soon do you think we'll get there?
I as I said, and this is why when we hosted that meeting with UNESCO, we really wanted to show colleagues that don't have a Ministry of Sport that they don't need a Ministry of Sport, but or grassroots level NGOs, they're doing so good. Because if the country cannot do it through the curricula at school, the NGOs on the ground with the Kazan action plan, they can see how to do it, how to build something so children can have some physical activity after school. So obviously it would be better if it would be part of the regular curriculum. But if it's not possible, then I think that you can find resources to both at the NGO level, at the individual level, to create at the community level some kind of a structure. But when I say structure, it's not it's not infrastructure. To build something like those runners in Ireland that started running and integrating people, and then the NGO came by itself, and they opened a branch in America last year because it was a mean of bringing people who could feel excluded in their society because they were refugees or other displaced person to finally find a meaning for why they are there and how they can be better integrated.
Which characteristics and traits do you believe young adults develop by participating in sports growing up?
I think that a sense of effort, but also the respect for the rules. When the same rules apply to everybody. I think this is a very important lesson that you cannot, when you are living in society, you have to follow rules. When you are protected by a constitution, you have rights, but you also have obligations. So I think this kind of, respect for the rules, to work with the other athletes, if you're in a team, the collegiality, or to face failure also teaches you lessons. So there are so many respect, hard work, team building. So many aspects are really helpful for your life as an adult and even as a child. To learn to respect others. To know when you have to be grounded, to respect your body, not feeding yourself with junk, and taking care of your health. So many aspects that sport teach young people, and then help them to, because everyone in life is going to go through struggles, and if you have that kind of mentality, you're going to be more resilient and less prone to overstress.
That makes sense. The physical activity of teenagers right now is very low, as it's been very sedentary during the pandemic. And many teenagers prefer computer games to sports. So what advice would you give to this younger generation to encourage them to replace entertainment in the virtual world with physical activity and fresh air?
Yeah. Well, not to be a couch potato nowadays, it's complicated because also it's called e-sport. So you have those very, very famous Formula One drivers that are very young and are competing in e-sport. It requires some kind of stamina to sustain those kind of races, even if you are in front of a computer. But I think it's again a young person will probably follow the advice of a sports star, whatever the sport, that listening to their parents when they say go out. But look, there is data that the Nordic countries are the happiest and healthiest people, and they are deprived of light, of natural life part of the year. So the fact that it's cold, that you have no light, it's not an excuse not to go out outside. But I think that it has to be through schools in our countries where it is organized, to bring the children outside and not only in the gym when it's feasible, and then for parents. But I feel also that the very famous sport people have a responsibility to say, hey, I didn't become a star by staying in front of my computer. If you want to do something, get out and move. And Michelle Obama was doing it here when she was the first lady. I think every person in position of power and responsibility should be try to bring those kids outside. Sometimes you feel, oh my God, I don't want to go out, I want to stay home. But actually, if you force yourself to go out or to go to the pool, to go to the gym, to just go outside, you will feel better most of the time than if you had stayed inside. So, yeah.
Studies have shown that COVID has affected our population's physical and mental health. Could you speak about how the mind-body connection of sports and how sports can also help improve our global mental health issue?
Yeah, well, I think it's a chemical reaction inside our body and in our brain when you move. So that's why, the Division of Inclusive Social Development had produced a brief during the pandemic, and that my colleague from Qatar and myself, we also wrote in the UN Chronicle, because people felt isolated. But, for example, in my family, my husband started to go out. New York was empty, and he started to walk, and he took amazing pictures. Nothing ever happened, anything, because when you're outside, well, at the time we were all scared, but you didn't really risk catching COVID, but just walking outside alone in the street. So, I believe that because of the chemical reaction in our body, in our cells, about having some kind of physical activity, that's why it's a no-brainer. That's why we were telling people, look, there are those apps. You don't feel alone, even if you are alone. You have no excuse if you have access to internet to put something and copy the exercises, and you will feel better after that because you won't feel that stiff or suddenly you and it's one things lead to another. When you feel better in your body, you feel stronger in your mind. And as I said, those people who run a lot, they develop that I forgot the name in English. That it's like it's almost become like a natural drug in your brain that you need to go out and do it, otherwise you're going to miss it. So it must not become an addiction where you're going to hurt yourself if your knee hurt or whatever. But it is proven. So the only way is to try not to, if you're not feeling like to, a little bit maybe force yourself.
Last question for you is, what advice would you give yourself a year ago to develop your personal productivity and stay motivated?
Well, to stay active is part of the work, because you know, during the pandemic, I started to be connected so much. By the month of June, I thought I was going to throw the computer against the wall. But at the same time, you know, I started to put the computer on top of the kitchen counter, for example, and started to do things being standing. So, and last week, for example, I never had a meal at home because, you know, when you are a PR and we are such a great community, you know, there are a lot of social interactions. So the only thing I had was my lemon juice in the morning at home. And then, you know, what I learned during the pandemic, because I could really take time, and by walking outside, I could think, and my health improved. So since then, you know, even when I don't feel like it, to oblige myself to save some time for physical activity is otherwise I don't sleep, and if I don't sleep, I cannot think properly, and I cannot function properly. So yes, to stay healthy is really to be doing some kind of physical exercise, because otherwise one thinks it's going to be a spiral, but on the wrong side, you know, where you're less active, so you don't sleep, so you don't sleep, so you don't think, you become easily upset, and then you cannot deliver what you are supposed to deliver at work. So yes, for me, certainly it's a lesson that not overcharge your agenda, to always be able to have some time for taking care of your body.
So, thank you very, very much, Your Excellency, for a wonderful presentation, illuminating not only many of the Sustainable Development Goals, but sharing your personal perspectives and preferences in your life and in your work. We are very grateful that you were able to make the time to be with us, and we wish you most success in your future, all of your future endeavors. And thank you, Susie, for monitoring, and have a very, very good week. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye. It's been an honor. Thank you very much.